Hey YouTube, let's talk about survival kits. This is a topic that is just full of debate, and there's all different types of philosophies, and depending on who you listen to and what books you read and the movies you watch and where you live and all these unique situations, I'm telling you what, it's a very difficult topic to kind of get your head around if you're new to all this. But I can tell you that there's actually some basic items that are fundamental in pretty much everyone's kit systems, foundational items, if you will. And so let's go over that today. This video is in response to a lot of questions I get on an ongoing basis about what constitutes a survival kit. What is the basic that you can do and it still be considered a survival kit? But once again, there's a lot of opinions about that. So some people would say, well, these 5 items are my survival kit. Other people say these are my 50 items, and that's just the basic foundation of my survival kit. So who's right and who's wrong? Well, no one's really right and wrong. It's just different ideas. But here are my thoughts on this particular subject. The first item is basically some type of means to make fire. It could be primitive, it could be modern, whatever gets your goat. You know, ferro rods, matches, lighters, flint and steel strikers, whatever it is. You just make sure you know how to use it and have some different types of tinder and have those in some kind of like a waterproof container, and I think you're pretty much good to go. I wouldn't just have one type, though, of fire starter. I'd have at least 2 or 3. In case one type doesn't work in that environment, you have another type that may. The next item is some type of like a tarp system, or even better, in my opinion, are the insulated sportsman blankets or sportsman tarps. They're kind of like 2-in-1. They have grommets on them, and they're really nice. And you can get them in bright colors, which I would probably advise that would be good, so you can be more visible, so that people can find you, especially if rescue crews are looking for you. The next item is cordage. Most people prefer the some type of parachute cord. 550 type 3 is the most common in America. Just make sure you get made in the U.S. Types of paracord that are made of nylon. Because if you get the polyester, most of that stuff is made overseas. Quality control is not very good, and typically the load rating is quite a bit lower. Okay, this is the part when people get all tripped up and they're like, oh no, you have to have this or have to have that. And that's your cutting tool. Okay, so some people are all into having saws, and some people want axes, and some people say you have to have a tomahawk, and some people have a fixed blade knife or a folding knife. What's the answer? This one you're on your own to the most part, but just have something to cut things. For me, I think you can get away with a medium to large size Swiss Army knife that has a folding saw on it, have a couple blades, maybe have an awl or a reamer punch, and that pretty much does it. You know, I mean, that constitutes for me some of the basic tools. Let's jump to the next, and that's the headlamp. Have some extra batteries or the means to charge it a few times, but a headlamp is always, in my opinion, the best route to go when it comes to if you just came down to one option and one option only, the headlamp. You're hands-free. You can find some amazing options out there. I think that Through Night is probably one of the better ones in terms of the brands out there, but there's a lot of others too. But that's just one of many that give you a ton of different options in terms of lighting modes and outputs, and some of those are extremely bright modes. The run times are amazing. The battery technology just gets better and better. It's just, man, you know, headlamps now are nothing like they used to be. You go back 10 years and you compare to what they have now, it's just completely different, and it's awesome. The next item would be a decent compass, like a Sunto, you know, maybe even a Silva brand, but just get you a good brand that actually works and has a good track record, and have some maps of your area, and have that in a map pouch, which should be waterproof, you know, or at least highly water resistant. The next item is a metal container. It's not that you couldn't have a plastic water bottle or something, but just know that it's going to be more risky when you try to boil water or cook food, or all the things that you'd probably want to do possibly with a container, so you got to look at the durability as well. A nice thick stainless steel water bottle is going to outlast pretty much any plastic bottle. A water filter, you can get some very small water filters these days. The mini Sawyer water filter, I saw it just recently, like for $13 on Amazon. You can't go wrong with that. Just make sure that you fill your container, your water bottle, whatever your, canteen, whatever you have, with water, and make sure your kit's ready to go. Just like you should have maybe at least some calories in there. You may not even have a full MRE, or, maybe you don't even like MRE, so don't put them in there, but maybe have something. Some people like to put some kind of candy in there. Some people go with bouillon cubes. Maybe it's a couple of food bars, but have at least a few hundred calories at a minimum. The next item is a signaling device, but the way I look at it is that there's really like two main ways of signaling in a primitive fashion. That's going to be visually and audibly. For visual, you have the signal mirror, bright bandanas. You could also use like bright duct tape, and you could also double that as a trail marker. But these things can help rescuers find you. And for the audible means, obviously, a whistle, right? And I would have one of each type at the minimum in your kit. The next is a basic portable trauma kit. And notice I didn't say first aid kit. I mean an actual trauma kit, but it doesn't have to be completely over the top. We're talking about foundational items here. We're talking about like a tourniquet, some type of hemostat possibly, some gauze pads, a wrap, things like that. Just some basic stuff, and you could possibly put together a basic trauma kit with maybe 4 or 5 items. I mean, that's all we're talking about, having some capability of stopping some serious stuff, because you can bleed out, and that's a real thing. If you get injured and you can't stop the bleeding, and you could perish from that. Now, when it comes to self-defense, it just depends on where you live in the world, how you're going to deal with this, and how, if you want to go along with the laws or not in your area. But you may want to include a firearm in your kit. You may not. You may want a more primitive means. I don't know. You may want to, for example, use what you already have in your kit. Maybe you have a fixed blade knife in your kit. Maybe you can use that for self-defense. I don't know. But it's just something to also consider. In my case, I would probably have some type of takedown 22 caliber rifle. To me, that kind of makes sense at a minimum. And now, what to do with all this stuff? Well, I wouldn't probably put it in a duffel bag or some type of grocery bag, or you hear a lot of people do some silly things in terms of how they carry things. Even the sling bags are not really the most efficient way. Just get yourself a decent backpack. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it distributes the weight the best over any system, and it's going to keep your hands free. So just a basic backpack that's going to be decent and durable. It doesn't have to be some type of $100 511 bag or a $200 Maxpedition bag, even though they're really nice. You can go with something much, much more affordable. But that's my list. That's my list. It's a foundational list. Hopefully it'll get you started. And there's just so many things and so many options to pick from these categories, I mean, let's just pick one here real quick. When it comes to once again, your cutting tools, there's so many companies that make these devices, of all different sizes and shapes with different materials. The sky is the limit, I mean, if you only have $10, there's $10 knives. If you want to spend $1,000, there literally are knives for $1,000 and up that are designed for quote unquote survival. Now, most survival knives, they typically kind of range between $50 to $250 that are kind of the more well-known and, the knives that you see on channels, on outdoor channels and so forth. But you definitely can find some custom knives out there. If you have the money and you want those, they're available. But if you're trying to just do this on a budget, you can certainly put together a foundational kit for easily under a couple $100. But you have to be diligent and you have to be mindful and not to go too crazy on one item more than another item. So if you're spending like $5 on your fire kit, you know, you don't want to spend like $100 on your blade. You know, you kind of want to keep it all in sync. You know, so maybe try to find a decent $20, $30 multi-tool. You know, maybe a Swiss Army knife, and that would be pretty reasonable. You know, and your cordage, you know, your cordage doesn't have to cost a fortune. You don't have to get specialty cordage. You can just get some, once again, parachute cord or a bank line. So, you know, this stuff is not rocket science, but a lot of people get tripped up and they just kind of throw their hands in the air and they say, I'll just buy a pre-made survival kit. And then when you get those, especially if you're only paying $50 to $100 and you look in there, you're going to see that you got some very low quality stuff. It's almost always the case that you get some cheap stuff. All this stuff, some of them are knockoff items, and that typically are from some type of foreign country like China, and the quality typically is so low that you're going to be embarrassed and you're going to see that you're really not prepared. So don't do that. I would try to avoid any pre-made kit of any type. Just don't even go there. Just take some time, save a few more dollars, and get the good stuff. And you can use that for a long period of time. In fact, some of this kit could last you the rest of your life. Sometimes you can buy things still that it's a one-time purchase, you know. Once you bought it, you're done. You don't need to buy it again as long as you maintain it and keep good care of it and don't lose it or have anybody steal it. That, you know, maybe that knife is the last knife that you'll need. So anyways, hope this helped. Let me know what you thought about this video. Thanks for watching.